Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion with WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, historians, and editorial board. We first start with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and then give you the latest USC football news. First, let's meet this week's panelists. Marc Kulkin, WeAreSC columnist who writes the Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season football and basketball practice reports. Chris Arledge, former William Jewell College defensive back and team captain, and WeAreSC columnist who writes the popular column Musings with Arledge, and is a graduate of the USC Law School. Kevin Bruce, former USC first team all-conference linebacker and team captain for the 1975 Trojans, and a WeAreSC columnist who writes the Defensively and Offensively Speaking after every USC game. And Greg Katz, that's me, your moderator and producer of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes the obvious and not so obvious, IMHO Sunday, and an active member of the Football Writers Association of America. Before we kick off this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, here is the latest USC football news as of today's Tuesday afternoon. Here we go. On Monday morning, the Associated Press released its preseason top 25 poll, and the USC Trojans were number 14 in the nation. The AP's top 4 teams in the country in order were Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson. In terms of the Pac-12 conference, Utah was ranked number 7 and Oregon number 11. Notre Dame was number 5 in the land. USC plays at number 7 Utah on October 15th and hosts number 5 Notre Dame in the Coliseum on November 26th. The Trojans scrimmaged Sunday night in the Coliseum, but it was closed to the media, and the team did not practice on Monday. So this is where we're at as of Tuesday. This upcoming Saturday morning's practice will mark the official conclusion of training camp, thus transitioning into the normal Monday through Friday in-season practice routines. The media will be allowed to view approximately the first 20 to 25 minutes of Tuesday morning's practice and Wednesday afternoon's practice sessions. The Trojans, obviously now in full pads, announced their first major injury in training camp when head coach Lincoln Riley revealed on Friday that junior tight end Jude Wolfe would likely be lost for the first half of the season with a foot injury, which required a medical procedure. Riley did not comment how or when the injury took place. And with the temporary loss of Jude Wolfe for the first half of the season, Trojans are expected to back him up with anticipated starter Malcolm Epps, with a support group consisting of Lake McCree, Ethan Ray, Josh Rollo, and preferred walk-on Sean Mahoney. And over the weekend, the USC football program sent out a fight on emoji through social media, indicating a potential class of 2023 recruiting commitment, according to a source close to the fight on emoji situation. We have been advised to keep an eye on uncommitted offensive lineman Alani Noah from Sacramento Grant Union High, who has scheduled a Tuesday morning YouTube announcement and was considered a heavy lean to USC. And transitioning from football training camp, the calendar there, to the USC academic calendar, fall classroom instruction for USC students and athletes begins next Monday, August 22nd. And finally, friends, WeAreSC's Inside the Trojans Huddle greatly appreciates your viewer and listenership, and we encourage those of you watching on sites like YouTube to click on the red subscriber and like buttons. It's greatly appreciated, and it is free. And we encourage you to check out WeAreSC.com and become a valued premium member of the best USC football and athletic news source around. And with that, we head into the first quarter kickoff. Panel, it's time for kickoff, and a couple of topics, one late breaking. Topic number 1, let's discuss looking at the preseason top 25 poll rankings, which is used by most media services. Are you satisfied with the Trojans at number 14 in the country to start the season? And what do you think of number 5, Notre Dame, number 7, Utah, and number 11, Oregon in the rankings? As usual, our leadoff hitter, Marc Kulkin. Marc, what were your thoughts as soon as you saw the AP poll?
Yeah, I'm fine. 14, they're in striking range. Nothing to be ashamed at, especially you're coming off 4-8. You got a new coaching staff. You got a a brand new, unique roster that college football's never seen before. You're in striking range. You're giving a lot of benefit of the doubt to Lincoln Riley, which I think he's earned. You're bringing in, two dynamic players, one at quarterback, one at wide receiver. One's a Heisman candidate. Well, they're actually both Heisman candidates. One's the reigning Biletnikoff Award winner. They're sticking them there at 14, and they have no idea what the defense is going to look like. So that's a very fair preseason ranking.
Chris Arledge, is it a fair preseason ranking?
Sure. I don't have any problem with 14. I think USC will climb. I think over the first half of the season before that Utah game, the Trojans are likely to be 6-0 and probably climb up close to the top 5. As for the other teams, I think there's a huge gap between numbers 1 through 3 and everybody else. Yeah. Notre Dame may belong at number 5. We'll see. But the difference between number 5 and number 3 is like the Grand Canyon size gulf. Utah's fine at number 7. I think that they're a tough discipline program. They have a returning quarterback. They have some nice pieces around him. Utah never has the sort of talent that the elite programs have. So I think they'd have a hard time beating anybody else in the top 5, but that's a good spot for them. Oregon's vastly overrated at number 11, completely new coaching staff, new quarterback. If they start the kid from Auburn, he's going to be lousy. That's a terrible ranking, but that's fine. They'll play Georgia the first week. That will solve that problem.
All right. Well, let's go to El Capitan. Kevin Bruce, good to have you back, buddy. What did you think of those rankings when you first got an eye full of them?
Well, I don't spend a whole lot of time on a preseason ranking, frankly, anyway. It's like, let's go watch people play football. We'll know a lot more. But that said, it's noteworthy. I think 14, it's not a bad number. I mean, relatively, speaking, given the prior season's performance or lack of successful performances, I'm okay with that. Then let's go put the gear on. Let's go and play some football games. Let's win some games and let's move on. I think the top 1 through 5. No argument for me. I think you could look at Notre Dame and say, well, they've got some pieces they need to make sure that they have to get him to play, especially at quarterback. I think, but they make up a lot of that need with their offensive line, frankly, and their tight end. So they'll be good. They'll be solid. So I'm not overly concerned. The bigger deal for me, since I live in Dallas, is that Longhorns weren't even in the top 20, and everybody is moping around the neighborhood here. So I'm trying to make sure that I keep a low profile to the extent that I can. Not one of my strong suits.
Kev, can you confirm that the Longhorn steer is not on suicide watch at this moment?
Highly medicated. Highly medicated.
Yeah. All right, I'll say that the rankings are fun. They're really the only rankings I think that really count are the ones at the end of the season when the college football playoff committee starts releasing them. But I enjoy them. I like the media poll more than the coaches poll. Obviously, I'm media, but what I really like is the fact that SC is going to get to play Utah, and they're going to get to play Notre Dame. And they're going to be able to prove themselves. And what these rankings prove to me is there's going to be a lot of excitement in the second half of the season. So congratulations to the Trojans on being number 14.
What was Florida ranked? I actually didn't look at the whole list. Did Florida come in ranked at all?
No, I don't think they did.
No, they did not.
I was asking because obviously, how Utah does down in Gainesville is going to play a part in how USC's win over Utah, if that happens, is proceeding.
Absolutely. And let's remember, I think that Notre Dame opens up with Ohio State.
Yeah.
So these rankings could juggle a lot. And of course, Oregon is going to play Georgia to open it up. So, a lot of changes could happen after that first big weekend. But
remember, we have Rice. So,
Well, Greg never forgets that.
Did they show up with the receiving votes column, Greg?
Yeah, I checked that, but I'm actually passing out bumper stickers. Beware the rice.
Did the vote come from you?
Beware the owl.
That's right.
Greg gave Rice the only number one vote in the preseason poll.
Well, you know what? I'm always a giving person, always looking out for the less fortunate. And, I expect that they actually will show up in the Coliseum on the given Saturday. So
they have to get their check.
well, if they give a hoot, they'll show up. Yuck, yuck, yuck.
Very, very good.
All right, topic number 2, we move on in the first quarter. Second topic, with the season opener merely 3 weeks away and training camp coming to an end on Saturday morning. My question is, what do we know about this team? What do we think we know about this team? And what do we still want to know about these number 14 ranked USC Trojans? And we'll stay in the same order. Mark, tell me what you think of those three, what's your answers to those 3 questions?
So we know that Lincoln Riley is in charge of this program, without a doubt. We
Way to
think,
go out on a limb, by the way. Thank you for that clarification.
yeah, low hanging fruit. Might as well
That's
take
why
it.
people watch this program. For
You
breaking
bet your
news like
life,
that.
buddy.
That's
You
right.
got it.
We think we know that they're going to be more physical this year. From what we were able to watch in practice in those first 20-25 minutes when they're done skipping and stretching, we actually saw some real good live tackling without a soft landing. The linebackers are actually wrapping up and driving guys into the ground. So that's something I think we can look forward to. And then will they be healthy enough when they open up the season? Will they have a healthy enough defense on the 2 deep? Last Friday, Roy Manning's group literally had one guy suited up who had a scholarship. The other was a preferred walk-on. That was his position group during warmups. So again, they're having more physical practices. How is that going to affect them going forward? Will Lincoln Riley when will he pull up knowing that, hey, he can only cross-train so many positions without weakening other spots? So something to kind of keep an eye on.
All right, Christopher, you're the lawyer here. So what do we know? What do we think we know? And what do we still want to know about these Trojans?
What do we know? We know the offense has a ton of potential. We don't know much else. But what's interesting to me is that Lincoln Riley has not been downplaying expectations. I mean, some people will tell you undersell and over-deliver. He is not underselling. I mean, he had the comment last week about how well the defense is playing, and he was and really talking in glowing terms about that unit. I don't know what we're going to see out of the defense. Usually in training camp, the defense is going to be ahead of the offense. Offense requires more coordination than defense does. You put 11 guys on the field that are playing aggressively, playing hard, running the football, a defense can have success. And you obviously have to have some coordination, but not like you do on offense. So usually the defense is ahead, but he was really talking up the play of the defense and talking about them dominating the offense last week. I don't know what to make of that, except this. That offense is going to be really good. And they're going to be really good. They're going to score a ton of points. And so if the defense is anywhere in the same ballpark as the offense, this is going to be a really good USC team. But I'm a little bit, we haven't seen him play. So I was a little bit surprised to hear him say that. We went through it a couple of weeks ago, and there are question marks all over that unit. But it sounds like they're playing well in camp, so that's promising.
Kevin, what's your feelings on what you've gathered? What do we know? What do you think we know? And what do we still want to know about the Trojans?
Well, what we would like to know far exceeds what we do know. We don't know very much, frankly. We know about an injury. We know that there's some very good talent on offense, and I'd say on the defense there's good talent. It's a little choppy in some areas. We know that. That's personnel. So that we can know. So we do where they play and what first, second, third, whatever team. Hard to say with any specificity at this point in time. What I've done is to try to get a better sense of fill in what we would like to know. For me, I like to know, since I have defensive play in my background, I want to know more about what the defense is going to look like, and what Coach Grinch would bring to the party. So I studied a lot of the OU films over the last couple seasons, and it was pretty interesting. And I think we have some personnel that's going to fit what he has typically done. I assume that what he has typically done is what we're going to see a certain amount of that as we go forward with the defense. It's going to be markedly different than anything we have seen for years out of the USC defense. I think we know that in terms of how he calls the game, how he plays offense. Chris, everybody's, this team. If you're coaching, you're on the other side, and you're coaching, and you're looking at some of that talent, you're going, oh man, wow, that's some scary stuff. And there's a lot of speed. There's a lot of skill. There's a lot there. And if it's developed at all, the amount of talent and athleticism really is a top 10 type team. I think without doubt. But you got to go out, suit up, play the game, win some games. And frankly, we need to go into Utah undefeated. And Chris is right. And we need to make a signature statement win against Utah on their home field. That's a have to. That's a marquee win. It has to be done.
I think you'll get an agreement amongst the panel. I'll say what we do know is we know that Jude Wolf is out. We know that. We know by Mark's reports who goes to that infamous island of injuries to do their rehab. What we know is that a guy like Quinones is moving up the depth chart in terms of as an offensive lineman. Gino is a guy you can root for. And we don't. What we know is that Bobby Haskins is going to play somewhere. The transfer from Virginia. What we think we know is that they're going to have a explosive offense. We're told there's going to be a good defense. In fact, if I recall, Lincoln Riley said he expects an outstanding offense and defense. He's putting it on the line there. The problem I have is that we can't watch it. There's no cross-examination. I have no reason to believe that what Lincoln Riley is going to say isn't the truth from his perspective, but let's face it, there's nothing like seeing it for yourself. And we won't see it until they play the season. And what we still want to know about these Trojans are the culture has changed, as we are told. Is this team coming off a 4-8 season, a new roster basically? Do they have to learn how to win for week to week? And what happens if they lose somewhere along the way? Personally, I think the three big games for them are at Utah, at UCLA, and hosting Notre Dame. If they don't, stub their toe along the way with the other 8 teams, this team could really, really have a great record. In fact, I kind of changed my opinion on it. It all comes down, and I agree with Kevin 100%. You're going to see a lot happening with Utah, win or lose. If they win, they could be undefeated all the way to UCLA. And if they lose, we'll find out what kind of culture and character they have to bounce back. I don't think even if they lost at Utah, that they're out of the picture for the Pac-12 title or even an outside chance of a college football playoff. You just don't know. So those are things that we don't know.
I got a follow-up question for
sure.
For Kevin and Chris. When you guys were going through fall camp, is there a way for you as a captain, as a player, to gauge the strength of the players' mentality? How mentally tough they were during camp, during practice?
That was easy for me. I mean, you just knock the crap out of somebody, they get back up. they're tough. If they don't get up, not so much, and they're not going to play.
Not physically, mentally.
Yeah, I mean, mentally, it's physical. You can't even separate the two. Honestly, I mean, if you're mentally tough, you're going to be physically tough. It's hand in glove.
I think that's right. I would also add though that there are guys who are physically so good that they don't get challenged in practice the way you'd want them to. That may not have been the case when Kevin was at SC because there was so much talent on both sides of the ball, but I've certainly seen that. And those guys, you don't know what they have until you get in a game and things actually start to go south, because it's easy to play hard and play aggressively when you're successful. It's when you go out and get embarrassed and you're down 2 scores at halftime that you see what people are made of. And I don't think we're going to know that about this team until they get some adversity. That may not be till Utah, but it wouldn't surprise me if they had a little bit of adversity in that Fresno State game. That Fresno State team's going to play well. They're well coached. They have a good quarterback coming back, and they are going to be up for that game. So I think that's a game where it wouldn't surprise me if that game's a dogfight well into the third quarter.
Oh, I agree with you, Chris. I think you're absolutely right on that one. Yeah, it's going to be close. It's going to be a bloody game, and you know what? That's what football's all about.
Mark, I have a question before we move on. Have you heard whether Rayshawn Davis was moved to strong safety?
Last time we saw him, when I say we, the media, was Friday at practice, and he was tackling with the linebackers and Brian Odom.
Okay.
So I don't know.
That's a rumor that's out there, and I have not found it confirmed.
The safety group is so deep. I would be shocked if they moved him there. There's just no need.
He's not going to play. He's not going to play at safety this year, and he's probably oversized and doesn't have enough speed to play that spot anyway in this defense.
He's not a safety. Grinch is going to play generally a 2 deep, sometimes a single on top, and you gotta have some foot speed to cover running halves or a single high safety. So
you got a returning starter from Ohio State that I'm not sure is going to see the field. I don't think that.
I tell you what, he needs to be on the field. That's my point.
He might be, but they have a couple of safeties that can play in the back.
Oh, I know.
So that's one of the strong spots on the team. I don't know anything about what the coaches are thinking. We don't get to see Davis in practice, obviously, but if they put him there, he's getting buried.
Yeah, the safety position is good. It's deep. I don't know why.
But remember, you're right. You got safeties too, but you've got nickelback too, and the dime back is more going to be a cornerback style of play, but the nickelback is really more your speedy linebacker type personnel.
Your nickelbacks right now range from Max Williams up to a Xavier Alford. So, I mean, that's the size differential they're going from, and Max isn't small anymore.
Well, I mean, Bullock isn't very big either, and he can knock people on their butt. So, it takes more than just mass to make it work.
All I'm saying is Rayshawn Davis. I have not seen any sign of him moving anywhere close to the safety position.
Look, let's be honest too. I mean, there is not an overwhelming group of talented players at linebacker right now. I mean, he's got to be able to crack that 2 deep and make some plays. If he can't do that, he's not going to make plays in the second. So, I don't know, Greg. I hadn't heard that, but if that happens, that's bad news, because I think we're all counting on him to actually play at linebacker and play well. If he's not doing it, they only have so many guys there who can. They're about one twisted ankle away from having a gigantic problem.
Good point.
Yeah. Well, looking at doing some research, I'm sorry, Greg, doing the research and looking at the OU films for the last couple seasons on defense, in particular, the linebacker play is very active, which, okay, that that's lateral and actually backpedaling too comes in handy. In the box, you got to know which way to go and be there and get there in a hurry kind of thing. So guys that show that type of capability are going to have to play. I think some of the length that we have with some of these linebackers is really kind of interesting. I think it's going to take some teams by surprise when you got a guy out there 6'5", 6'6", playing inside linebacker potentially. Maybe not every down, but certain downs, 3rd and 10, 15, 3rd and 12, those taking away a pass lane would be kind of interesting, or taking away a tight end and out scheming the tight end, being able to high point tight ends with an inside linebacker. That's pretty significant step in the right direction. So to Chris's point though, look, we don't know anything about the linebacker core because we haven't seen them play as a unit.
All right, guys, let's move on to the second quarter here. We're going to switch gears. Panel, the Los Angeles Times recently reported that a group of very rich USC donors and diehard fans are creating their own NIL collectives against the university's wishes, launching soon a collective known as Student Body Right. This will be a third-party collective which believes that it is imperative for their beloved Trojans to compete with other top schools like Notre Dame and Texas A&M that also have collectives. USC, however, is concerned that this third-party collective could invite future NCAA scrutiny and problems. Among those reported by the Times to be part of this super collection of mega boosters is a gentleman named Dale Reach, a Florida-based businessman and reputed major donor during the Pete Carroll era, and Brian Kennedy, who was once one of the USC's major athletic donors and who built one of the football practice fields that bears his name. Rich told the Times that, quote, the collective's intent is to provide the equivalent of a base salary for every member of USC's football team who is academically eligible. To receive payments, players would perform community service and take part in charitable work with local organizations. Student Body Right has filed for tax deductions as a charitable organization, which would allow for certain donations made to be tax deductible. It should be noted that USC Athletic Director Mike Bone has refused to acknowledge the existence of Student Body Right. So that being said, panel, your thoughts on this new collective known as Student Body Right and this apparent division between the USC Athletic Department and this outside collective known as Student Body Right. Kevin, what do you think about this third-party collective?
Put them online, start making your contributions. It's the right way to go. I mean, we have to be competitive. These are today's rules. This is the game that we play. So play it and play it well. And, we have said repeatedly that USC alum group doesn't lack for money, but I would tell you that most other D1A schools don't lack for money either, for that matter. There's a lot of very successful people, a lot of money flying around, and why put ourselves in a competitive disadvantage? For the life of me, I don't get why SC would be taking a dim view of Student Body Right. First of all, it was a great play. Okay, just gotta say that. Second of all, it's a great name for any organization that's gonna, start dropping like some serious cash money on players. I think it's cool. Go for it. Absolutely, totally go for it. If the university doesn't like it, my point of view is too bad. Get over it.
Look at that smile on Marc Kulkin. He's ready to go. Okay, Mark, what do you think?
I agree with the tenor of Kevin's message. There's nothing USC can do about it. And that's what I think bothers USC the most, is they have no control over the situation. They could play it as, they want under the umbrella of we're looking out for the best interest of the student athlete, and they are. They want to make sure, Student Body Right has all their I's dotted and T's crossed with those tax donation forms, because that'll make sure that the players have at least a little bit of protection. But again, to have USC come out and say that, this guy Dale Resch has shown no past financial donations, that's beside the point. I know a lot of season ticket holders who the season tickets weren't in their name, they were just part of a group. USC had zero issue taking the Thundering Herd donation of a golf cart specifically for the football program back during the Pete Carroll years. So again, I think USC, I understand where they're coming from. I think this was more of a, here's where we stand, wink, wink, don't do this. We're going to look the other way. Why you do this? And what we don't know won't hurt us type of thing. But, like what Kevin said, you have to do it. You just hope that it doesn't become obnoxious, I guess is the best way to go.
Chris, is it going to get obnoxious? Can these parties all agree to work together? Your perspective?
I hope it becomes obnoxious. If what you mean by obnoxious,
I would expect nothing less of you, Chris.
if what you mean by obnoxious is throwing around large sums of money, I hope it becomes obnoxious. Look, I can understand why USC is unhappy about this, and it has everything to do with control and almost nothing to do with the NCAA rules.
That's right.
The NCAA is not going to penalize anybody. The NCAA can't penalize anybody. The first time the NCAA tries to penalize somebody, they'll take them into federal court and the NCAA will get disbanded. They're not doing anything. They are in violation of the antitrust laws. That's become very clear through recent court cases, including a Supreme Court opinion where there was a brutal concurrence. It's not about the NCAA. Here's what it's about. USC through Boulevard is trying to raise $75 million over 15 years. Money that goes to this other organization is not money that's going to Boulevard. If it's in Boulevard, USC controls it, right? And they get to decide how it's divided up, who it goes to. They have their hands on the levers. If it goes to this outside group, they do not have their hands on the levers. If that means this outside group raises $30 million and they don't get to their 75 million, that makes them unhappy. That's what it's all about. But the reality is, and I'm not saying anything derogatory about Boulevard. I wrote a couple of weeks ago in my musings after talking to Spencer Harris. I have a pretty good idea what they're trying to accomplish. Go read the article if you haven't out there in the cyber world. And I like what those guys are trying to do. The problem is it's taken them too long to do it. And they admit that. They admit it's taken them too long to do it. So now here we are in August. A lot of the blue chip guys have already committed. The others are committing in a few months. USC's program is still not up and running. You know who has programs up and running? Almost everybody else. I mean, Texas A&M sure does.
Notre Dame.
And Texas A&M is just handing out bags of cash. There's a long line of high school football players, and they're just handing them bags. Miami is handing out bags of cash. Tennessee is handing out bags of cash. USC's not in the game yet. That's a problem. And so I think it's actually a great sign that USC people have looked at the situation, said, we're not acting fast enough. Let's see if we can make something happen, and have set out to do it. Now, I don't think they have yet. I mean, my understanding is they're still in the early stages as well. It's not like they're handing out money yet either. But and look, there are some potential problems that come with the third party. In addition to NCAA sanction stuff, which I'm not worried about, there are some problems that come with it. It would be nice if Lincoln Riley had some say in how his players were being compensated, who was getting money and who wasn't, right? Because he's the guy that really has a pulse on the program and what's going on. And there probably won't be that much coordination between the coaching staff and this other group. Although, if the other group raises a lot of money, I bet they'll find a way to get their message out without having any direct coordination. So I think it's a good thing that we're doing this. You can't keep losing the big guys to other schools for very long. And so while the athletic department may be unhappy about it, I wonder deep down inside whether Lincoln Riley's unhappy about it. I wonder. I'm not so sure he is. I think big money getting tossed around to people who want to play football at USC is probably in his best interest.
I tell you, I think there's some issues with respect to how the athletic department has treated some of the large donors over the past recent years. And, you know, they need to lose control, they being the university, because what they have done to some of these large donors, in my humble view, is disrespectful.
When Lincoln was asked about this specifically on Friday, he didn't seem too annoyed by the whole situation. The LA Times article made it out that, you know, Lincoln was annoyed by it. Look, if Ryan Day can come out publicly and say my roster is worth $13.5 million, what is USC's roster worth in Los Angeles? You know, Lincoln can come out and say it, and that's where student body right comes in.
Well, I think that I know Brian Kennedy quite well. He's a true USC Trojan.
Yeah.
He will do anything and everything he can to make the program number one within reason. He gets it. They've treated him like dog feces, in my opinion, not because I know him, it's because they have. There's been things with Len Swan and putting his name on the practice field that he's built, saying, we're going to remove your name if you don't give us more money. That's been out there. But I think Lincoln Riley handled it well, because he said, and I saw him say it on the video, that he thinks they can all work together, that I think that they could all pull together. Come on, these are adults. They all have the same common purpose. I think what scares me was when the administration at the highest level started disbanding all the Trojan clubs around California. They wanted to be in control of the money. That was anybody who knows SC, Mark would know it, Kevin would know it, Chris would know it, I know it. You know, you get rid of these people. These are the lifeblood people. These are the diehards, and you just carve their heart out by taking them out of the process so that they have to have little meetings under different names. And it's really painful to watch. And I think, you know, this idea we have to be in control. Well, they don't have to be in control of everything. To ignore student body right is ridiculous. Just get your act together. You know what I liked about student body right is they were looking out for every player, giving every player an opportunity. So it wasn't like one person is getting all the goodies and everybody else stands by. You know, I thought, you know, Caleb Williams done a great job of kind of diffusing any, you know, animosity or jealousy, giving players the earphones and everything. I think it was beautiful. But at this point, come on, just get it together. You know, the pulling of the rope from the same end, please do it, because I think everyone will benefit from it. And it's not a power struggle. It's a struggle to be as one and get SC back to number one, or at least within that vicinity. So hopefully they can get it together. All right, let's go to halftime. Kind of an offbeat question here, panel, but I think everybody that watches and listens to Inside the Trojans Huddle probably can relate to this one. Of all the USC games, home or away, that you have ever attended, which stadium has the worst parking before and or after a game? We define parking to include the process getting into a stadium parking lot and departing a stadium parking lot. Chris, what is the worst aggravating, I can't take it anymore, experience for stadium parking lots that you've been at for a USC game, home or away?
Well, the Rose Bowl is pretty terrible, and the drive back to Chicago from Notre Dame after the game is pretty bad. But I haven't had anything as bad as the drive back to Kansas City from Kansas State. I went to that 2001 game where USC lost a close game to Kansas State, at least on the scoreboard. They got pushed around a lot. And the line of cars on that tiny little country road headed all the way back to Kansas City was just awful. I mean, you're talking about hours and hours where you're just crawling along. It was horrible. I never want to do that again. So that's the worst one I remember.
Kevin, now we know that you got to get the free bus ride when you were playing, but once you stopped playing and you started going to games, what stadium was the worst for you?
The Rose Bowl. for the Rose Bowl game. I mean, the UCLA game doesn't draw the crowd, draw your own conclusions. But the Rose Bowl game itself, especially when we're in it, right? The parking is, it's crazy. And it's improved. So that tells you a lot. It's just a bad experience, but generally the Rose Bowl games we would win, and it's like, okay, I feel good. I can put up with a 4-hour departure window here. So
Okay, Mark, you're an experienced veteran of going to away games as well as going to home games. What really frosts you? What stadium? What area?
Yeah, well, look, it's easy to pick on the Rose Bowl. I agree. That place is a nightmare getting in and out of, especially for a Rose Bowl game. For me, though, I got to go with Oregon State, believe it or not. Chris, you brought up the back road, tiny highway. That is Corvallis to Highway 5. It is a crawl. It sucks, especially if USC lost. So Oregon State, and just as a side note, leaving Stanford at night, it's not getting out of there is fine, but finding your car at night can be a real pain.
yeah, you got to drop a pin on your phone there, brother.
Yeah.
I've had that problem in Notre Dame too, trying
Yeah.
to find my car multiple times. It's awful.
Well, I will say this. I'm going to agree with Mark, because one time I made a big mistake covering SC at Oregon State. I was coming down from Portland, and the bumper to bumper traffic, because you know that Eugene and Corvallis, you take the same road.
Yeah.
And I've been to all the stadiums over and over and over again, and they all have their negatives. But that Oregon State, getting off the freeway, and you have one ramp. I didn't get to a game, and I'm embarrassed to even say it, but then again, not much will embarrass me. But I didn't get there till about 7 minutes into the first quarter. I was beside myself. I could not believe how bad it was. And then to leave Oregon State is like the reverse process. It's even worse, because going to a game, people all arrive at different times. People all leave generally at once. And that one lane, I mean, it is like nothing you've ever seen before unless you've done it. Now, when I've gone to Oregon State or going to Oregon, I have taken a bus or tram to there's a strip mall there, and you can do that. And I've done that, and I get a ride back to where I'm staying. But that's a bad one. But I'll tell you another bad one is Happy Valley at Penn State. Oh my word. That's like, will someone please get us into the year 2000? It was horrendous. I think in the I don't know, it was 1990 something. But boy, I don't think it was unhappy valley for me. That I will tell you, it was just a nightmare getting in and out of there. It's in the middle of nowhere. All right, let's move on. I think we've all exposed our feelings towards the parking problems. So before we begin the second half, a reminder that you're watching or listening to WeRC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle. This week's WeRC panelists include Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, Kevin Bruce. I'm Greg Katz. We also encourage you to check out WeRSC.com's website, part of the On3 network, and become a subscriber to the best coverage of USC football and recruiting and overall Trojans athletics. And as a reminder, WeRSC is currently offering a WeRSC 1 week only special deal in which you can subscribe for a year. Get this, for only $10 or just $1 a month to view our exclusive On3 Plus content, which includes breaking stories, analysis, recruiting, data for USC football, basketball, and the balance of USC athletics. Third quarter. All right. This is an interesting one. We kick off the second half and the third quarter with this panel. Do you think that UCLA, currently committed along with USC to play in the Big Ten starting in 2024, will be pressured by politics in remain in the Pac-12? And what would that do if they do stay what would that do to the local USC UCLA rivalry as well as recruiting if the local schools are in separate conferences? Mark, what's going to happen here? Is UCLA going to how's the word, succumb to pressure, stay in the Pac-12? What do you think?
Are you hearing rumor that they are? Because honestly, I think this question is, no offense, Craig, dumb.
Well, that's
That's
why
that's
I knew
offensive.
that Kulkin would understand it if I did that. So
Well,
I tried to be a
like,
little bit
this
compassionate.
isn't one of those situations where UCLA is going to say, you know what, we changed our mind, psych, we're not going. You don't make this type of decision, one day and then the next day say, you know what, Gavin Newsom is upset with us, so maybe we better not do this. No, they're going. They're just getting some negative blowback. Who cares? And as far as recruiting, their recruiting sucks as it is. It makes no difference what conference they play in. Even with recruits knowing that UCLA is moving to the Big Ten, their recruiting is in the dumpster. Eric Sodenheimer, one of the biggest freaking homers there is for that program, called out how bad Chip Kelly and UCLA recruiting is in California. It's horrible. You know what? At this point, maybe they should stay. They would just be an anchor around USC.
Chris, stop laughing. Mark is.
I thought it
Mark
was
is speaking
fun.
from the heart, and you're giggling all over the place. Now stop that.
I don't understand what you mean. I was giggling because he took a shot at you. I thought that was funny. No, look,
Chris, that was
UCLA doesn't have a choice. The choice is go to the bank, go to the Big Ten, or go bankrupt.
That's right.
Now listen, I never want to underestimate Sacramento politicians' ability to screw up a good thing. I know that they're both capable and committed to doing that. But in this particular case, UCLA has to go, and everybody knows they have to go. And yes, the question about if UCLA wants to recruit, they need a new coach. Chip Kelly must be the laziest recruiter in the history of college football. It's shocking how bad he is. It's like he simply doesn't care.
Yeah.
I think Chip thinks he's so smart that he can pick up players that he can compete with San Jose State and San Diego State for players and still win because he's that good with his schematic advantage. I think that, but that's not the case clearly. And so I don't know what he's doing, but UCLA, and I want UCLA to come along to the Big Ten because it's fun to beat up on them. And I would hate to lose that rivalry the way Texas and Texas A&M lost theirs for some period of time. I don't think that would happen, but if you go to the Big Ten and UCLA doesn't follow and you have both of your rivals outside the conference, that does make out of conference scheduling somewhat difficult.
Yeah.
But they're going to come along. It's not an issue.
Is it an issue, Kevin?
Nah, it's Sacramento, blah, blah, blah. Talk to the hand. I mean, come on, just move on. Jeez. What a joke.
Well, I guess that you all are in consensus. I will say this. It will be interesting to me, just on a purely political football, to see what happens when they have this meeting that's coming up, discuss the situation. It's like they're eating their own. I don't really care whether they go to the Big Ten or they stay in the Pac-12. It really doesn't make a difference to me. I think if they go to the Big Ten, they'll never see the light of a championship, in my opinion. They're just not going to put it all on it to get there. If they stay,
they might in basketball.
They might in basketball.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you.
So I mean, there's a little more of the portfolio, right? But
And they're going to have enough money to pay for their football program now, right? And they can even pay for their own
they always
flight.
use that as excuse. We don't have the money that SC has. They
now-
certainly, Casey Wasserman certainly had the money to pay Chip Kelly, that's for sure.
that's right.
I'll tell you what, they could be in some real hurt in the Big Ten when it comes to football, because their heart isn't in it. It's in it for basketball, and they have the tradition. We respect that. But boy, I'll tell you what,
This is where we could hammer them, because we could, if we get our act together and get serious on the nil money, we bury them.
Agreed. Agreed. All right. Well, it looks like UCLA is going to the Big Ten as far as inside the Trojans huddle.
The
With
best source on inside UCLA information, I'm sure.
no question about that. I think the Bruin fans would all agree. Now, we're going to transition now into a very big moment that many of you live for this moment. So let me remind you, we are coming to the intersection of the third and fourth quarter, which means the torch, the Chris Arledge torch, is going to be lit in preparation of Chris. I don't know who you're going to blast, who you're going to level, who you're going to eviscerate. But before you do, just a reminder, any comments or opinions expressed by Chris Arledge are solely those of his own and are not in any shape or form a reflection of the opinions of WeRSC or the On3 network. Any republication, broadcast, use, or other descriptions of musings with Arledge without the express written consent of the United States State Department and the AFL-CIO is strictly prohibited. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we bring to you inside the Trojans Huddle's version of Christopher Arledge's Musings with Arledge.
Greg, thank you for that touching introduction. I don't know why you assume that I'm going to rip on somebody or trash somebody. That is not really my style, but I do have some comments today. A few weeks ago, when I was talking about Ohio State and Michigan on this program, I complimented both programs on their tradition and their accomplishments, and I noted that they have the second best rivalry in college football. Now, I know Ohio State and Michigan fans disagree with that. I know some of them were upset by those comments. So today I'm going to defend that statement. I'm going to do it with facts. I'm going to do it with logic. And as you've implied, I might do so with a fair number of probably unnecessary insults. College football is a big deal. It spans the nation, includes a diverse group of locations, colleges, and fan bases. So not surprisingly, there's a lot of diversity of opinion when it comes to the best rivalries. I'm very quickly going to dispose of some of the usual alleged contenders because they're not. Start with Army-Navy, an amazing spectacle. Some of the greatest American heroes have played in this game. It's a fantastic rivalry. But the simple fact is that the level of play just isn't high enough to make this the best rivalry game. It's not. The players aren't good enough. Auburn, Alabama, another great game and a rivalry that's as passionate as any. But the problem is this is a big brother, little brother rivalry, a game where one school is always trying to get out from under the other's shadow. Auburn's a very good program that does not qualify as elite. It's not a blue blood. This is not a rivalry of equals. Therefore, it can't be the best. And remember, we're talking about college rivalries. Colleges are educational institutions, or at least they're supposed to be. And if you required Auburn and Alabama fans to spell the word rivalry in order to get into the stadium, you'd only have 22,000 fans inside for the game. It is not the best rivalry. Texas versus Oklahoma. Texas hired Steve Sarkisian after seeing what he did at Washington and USC. Oklahoma is now a feeder school for better programs like Oregon or Pittsburgh. Good rivalry, but not the best. Oregon State, the Civil War, a game nobody outside of Oregon watches between two programs with bad uniforms and even worse traditions. A fight between two teams that the Big Ten doesn't want. No. So the throne must belong either to Ohio State, Michigan, or USC, Notre Dame. And it's close. Ohio State and Michigan are great programs. They play dozens of games with national title implications. In recent years, Ohio State has clearly been the best program of the four, and therefore that rivalry has had more national relevance than USC Notre Dame. And that's true. But the greatest rivalries are not decided on the last 10 years. And over the course of the modern college football, USC and Notre Dame are at least the equals of Ohio State and Michigan, and arguably superior, with more combined national titles, more first-round draft picks, more Heisman trophies. And yes, Buckeye fans, I know that it's Michigan, the one that's not pulling its weight in those categories, but it is what it is. But that's not what decides this issue. You see, a great rivalry is about contrasts. It's about two different people or entities that, while being very different, are still somehow equals. Think Ali Frazier. Ali, lean, quick, athletic, stylish. Frazier, short, compact, brutal. Lakers Celtics, the excitement of Showtime versus the blue collar, ugly cheap shot artists from the East Coast. The United States versus the Soviet Union. Now that's a rivalry. Free markets versus communism, liberty versus tyranny, Rocky versus Drago. A rivalry, I might add, which is won decisively by the good guys, Ivan. Now that's what rivalries are about. And that's why USC Notre Dame is so great. It's the contrast. USC firmly planted in one of the world's great cities, a cosmopolitan juggernaut, the center of the entertainment universe. You could go to the deepest, darkest jungles of the Amazon, find a tribesman who's never seen running water or electricity, who speaks in a language completely made up of clicks and grunts, and you could say Los Angeles and he'll know exactly what you're talking about. It's a place where people come from all over the world because of a dream that they can become legends. By contrast, Notre Dame's in South Bend, Indiana. For those of you who have seen it, you know without a doubt that the founders of Notre Dame were on the run from law enforcement. Because why else would you settle in that place? A place so devoid of anything resembling comfort, culture, or beauty that a criminal would know without a doubt that even if he were on the top 10 most wanted list, and even if the FBI had ironclad video evidence that he was in the town of South Bend, the FBI still wouldn't go there to make that arrest just because they don't want to be there. It's a place that anybody with even an ounce of talent or ambition drove, flew, hitchhiked, hot air ballooned, or crawled out of the first chance they get. It's East Berlin without the wall and the towers, a place where shame keeps people imprisoned. How about the mascots? USC, home of Traveler, college football's greatest mascot, a powerful, beautiful, magnificent beast, trained and ready for battle. Or Notre Dame, home of a weird little dancing dude with awful facial hair, who looks like he was brought over straight from performing in Spinal Tap's Stonehenge bit. USC, home of the famous song girls and many other talented, beautiful women, their skin kissed by the sun. Notre Dame, well, if you've been to a game at Notre Dame, you know. USC plays in the Coliseum, one of the most storied venues in the world. Built in 1921 at a cost of $954,000, a small fraction of what it costs Texas A&M to sign a blue chipper today. The Coliseum has hosted Super Bowls, Olympiads, presidents, popes, the greatest rock bands in history, and even a few games of the Lingerie Football League, not to mention some of the greatest college football games of all time. Indy also plays in historic Notre Dame Stadium, also one of the great venues in college football, and the site of some of college football's greatest stars. It's also the site of one of the greatest home field advantages in college football, largely because it is also the site of many highway robberies, as officials routinely cheat in favor of Notre Dame at that venue. The Irish should feel embarrassed about that. They don't. So yes, it's the contrasts that make this rivalry great. And those contrasts have made for some classic games. The comeback, the Bush push, the green jersey game. You remember that one. Notre Dame built a Trojan horse, pulled it onto the field. Notre Dame students piled inside. Not because they were trying to sneak into Troy like in Odysseus's tactical masterpiece. No, those Notre Dame students were hoping that they could sneak into the Trojan horse and that would allow them to escape South Bend. They just wanted a new life somewhere better. When the door opened, they saw they were still stuck in South Bend. They were enraged. They played with fire that only the desperate possess. All of this leads to the same inevitable conclusion. USC and Notre Dame, college football's greatest rivalry. Congrats to Ohio State and Michigan for being a very solid number 2.
All right. Those of you that are Notre Dame fans, keep tuning in to Inside the Trojans Huddle. I'm sure Chris has got plenty more to say where that comes from.
There's more where that came from, if that's what you're saying, Greg.
That's what
We'll
I'm saying.
get to it later.
We'll get to it later. You're goddamn right. All right. Panel, we enter the fourth final quarter. Here is an interesting situation as has arisen in all of college football. It'll probably affect everybody and USC, of course. The NCAA Division I Board of Directors has decided the proposed new rule of immediate eligibility after more than one transfer needs more discussion and refinement. Also, the Division I Student Athlete Advisory Committee Board pushed back on the new proposed transfer window, which would define periods of activity. The actual next transformation board committee meeting is scheduled for August 31st, and they will recommend any further changes to the recent recommendations. So, panel, do you agree or disagree that more consideration thought be given to the proposed new transfer rule and the window before it becomes law? And again, a reminder for those of you a little confused about it, they're making a rule that would say that athletes are no different than students. They could transfer and transfer and transfer. No penalty for being transferring. Right now, of course, you can do a one-time transfer, and if you're academically all right, you're eligible immediately to play. This new rule would basically say there is no one-time rule. It's like you can go wherever you want as long as you're academically eligible. So, Kevin, what do you think about that? As someone who I know did take his academics seriously, is this a chaotic situation that's going to get more chaotic?
Avoid making any decisions will be all right. As soon as they make a decision, assuming they could, which honestly, I don't think they will. The fact that they can even agree when they have meetings is amazing to me, to tell you the truth. This advisory group. Obviously I'm not impressed. They don't know the sport. They don't know they don't know a lot of stuff, and I'm unimpressed. And just the fact that you consider this and the chaos that this would create within a sport that's already facing a lot of unknowns with respect to name, image, and likeness money, and I can't wait for those rules to come down and get batted swatted aside. This is another one that should be swatted aside. I'm really tired of people who don't know a dang thing about the game, stepping their face into a situation and making it worse, not better. Just leave it alone, for crying out loud, please. Would you stop with the stupid, penalty changes, clock management, different definitions of holding and not holding, depending on, time of day, and it's in the same game. I mean, it's just, all this stuff is just crazy. This is a great game. Let it be what it is, a great game, for crying out loud. Stop this silliness.
Mark, is it silly to think that chaos, if you say to a player, you can keep transferring as long as you're academically eligible, is that feasible?
I'm glad they're stepping back and reevaluating it. Look, trying to compare a football student athlete with your regular student who can transfer and be eligible to compete academically at their new university whenever they want is comparing apples and oranges. You're talking about a huge, big business here with college football. College in general is a big business, but no, you can't have a player at USC one semester and then at Notre Dame the following semester because he didn't like the way this coach treated him as a freshman. And when you start letting the tail wag the dog, you're putting the players in charge of the game now. You have to have somebody in charge. One transfer per year. You can transfer as many times as you want, but once a year, and you can be eligible, but you can't show up in spring in Los Angeles and South Bend in the fall. You just can't have that kind of apparition in place.
Chris, can you have an apparition?
Application, excuse me.
I was gonna say, I don't know what that means, so I don't know, but I think this is a little overblown. I understand that people are concerned, especially in the day of NIL money, where college football seems to have an unregulated free agency system. I can see people being concerned with allowing people to go wherever they want, whenever they want. At the same time, that's exactly what the free market system has in every other business in America. And you know what? It works out okay. And I'll tell you why it worked out okay here too. Because you're not going to have a lot of guys who are jumping college to college 3, 4, 5 times during their career. And if guys are doing that, those are not the guys that you're really trying to hold on to. I mean, if you have somebody, think about whatever profession you're in, think about it. You have a guy who jumps to a new job every 6 months. That's probably not the best guy at any of those organizations. Though it's going to be somebody who's serially disgruntled, somebody who doesn't work very hard, somebody who's not contributing. Those are the guys who are going to jump all over the place over and over again. So I just don't think it's a big deal. I think that the marketplace will work this out. Eventually, I think the conferences will come up with NIL rules that are largely consistent with one another, probably enforceable even with the antitrust laws. And once you have that, then you're going to have some institutions with more money and some with less. That's always the case. But the NIL situation will settle down, and most players will pick a school and stay. Some will pick a school and leave once, but most aren't going to leave 2, 3, 4 times. It's not like every player is going to do that. I just don't think it's a big deal. If you're going to limit the ability to transfer, I think then you should at least have opt-outs for when the head coach leaves, things like that. I mean, the idea that coaches can bounce back and forth anytime they want, but that players who are sold a bill of goods by those coaches then can't leave bothers me a little bit. So I would at least allow that. But I just don't think it's a big deal. I think it'll all work out okay.
I think
players that jump around all the time are guys you don't want.
Yeah, well, you're probably right on that, but they're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And leave it to the bureaucrats, to come up with a solution to a non-problem.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Kevin. What I like about the rule, though, is it gets the bureaucrats out of it. I mean, the problem I have now is that you apply to the NCAA for a waiver, and then the NCAA's decision-making, their logic, their fairness, the rule of law, it's all in a black box decided by people that none of us trust and none of us should trust. And so if you're going to allow some waivers, and I think you are, I don't want the NCAA deciding those things based on whatever criteria they use. It's a program. The NCAA is run by fools and crooks. So I think any rule that takes the bureaucrats out of it is a good rule. And that's like I said, when the conferences, especially if you have 2 super conferences at some point, when they start setting rules, you may be able to find rules that make a lot more sense on NIL and transfers and the rest. But for right now, I would rather the NCAA just go sit in the corner and leave everybody alone.
I tend to agree with you with the NC2A, but you end up with the fools and crooks that are part of the universities making those decisions, and admissions and groups and other, Lord knows what else would be involved when you transfer and have to be admitted into a university. Yeah. So you look, you got the fools and you got the crooks. They're still there.
And it's not about mass, exodus from one school to, students leaving from one school to the next. It's at primary positions, trying to manage a roster. When you bring in a quarterback and he's like, all right, well, it didn't fit here, and you were planning on him being your quarterback, and all of a sudden now he's leaving. Again, it's not. I think players should be able to transfer, but one time a year. You got to have some rules in place. It doesn't, Chris.
One time a year doesn't offend me. But look, the quarterbacks who are winning the quarterback competition, they don't leave. It's the guys that aren't winning the quarterback competition.
But you know that once you have one quarterback go down, look, USC is in a kind of razor thin area right now. You've got 2 scholarship quarterbacks and not a lot behind that. So again, it's about managing a roster, and at that certain positions, yeah, it can become troublesome.
Well, okay, lovely. Then we end up with, to Chris's point, okay, free market, open it up. We'll have a bidding war, which is fine. Honestly, I mean that sincerely.
Yeah.
Have a bidding war for the best players, let transfer out, and too bad. I just, like Chris, I don't want fools and crooks making a decision with respect to this game. I'm tired of it. We're screwing it up.
Well, I just want JT Daniels to be able to go to yet another school halfway through this upcoming season. Any rule that allows that to happen is a rule I'm in favor of.
My only thing is don't give yourself a tattoo yet when you go to the first university. It may come back to bite you on the calf.
Yeah.
I do agree with Mark, though, that I do think they need guard rails. And I think that they need to compromise. I'm glad they didn't pass this rule immediately, that they went back and going to take a look at it, and windows of when to do it and when not to do it. I hope they get a lot of input from the coaches. I agree with Chris, who says the coaches come and go. Why can't the players come and go? But somehow they need to compromise so that it's not complete chaos. We may be a year or two away from that, only because somebody's going to transfer schools with an NIL contract. And does that contract get canceled immediately? And then somebody else says, oh no, why don't you transfer our school? We'll get you even say you'll make more money there. So I think it does need to be investigated a little bit more in depth. I think it's a good idea in concept, but still a ways to go. So with that, let's get into overtime. We're in overtime, and it's time to answer some viewer questions and panel answers in a free-for-all format. Folks, if you'd like to submit a question that we can answer or give our opinions, just go to either the Gary P. or We Are SC members message boards at wearesc.com. From there, you'll see the topic thread regarding questions for Inside the Trojans Huddle. So let's get to it. Guys, feel free to jump in. Question 1 from Vin Rock in South Central. With Coach Riley describing the defense as the dominant group at fall camp a few days ago, does that make you A, feel confident the Trojans will have a strong defense this season, B, concerned our offense isn't living up to the expectations, or C, you really don't have a perspective until you see several games played this season? Go for it. You don't even have to raise your hand.
D, coach speak. After 1 week, I think coach is being a little gratuitous. Get kind of motivate his defense. Look, I've seen what's out there. I see who's available. Maybe they had a really good day the day before, but the day that he made those comments, all those players that would be making an impact, they weren't available to practice that following day. So I think it was a little bit of coach speak.
You know, I think that I'm going to go with C. You really don't have a perspective until you see several games played this season. I don't know if several is needed, but there'll be enough, leaving out Rice. I think that you'll see Stanford. I think they do have a good coach. I think they'll try to control the game. I don't want to get into the Stanford game, but we'll get an idea about defending the rush, especially against Oregon State, because you know they're going to want to pound it. And we'll get some sort of idea where this defense is going. Any other comments, Chris or Kev?
I think I answered this question already earlier when it comes to Riley's statements about the defense, and am I surprised, frankly, that he is not underselling? He's either overselling, which is a strange thing to do in your first year to school when you still have plenty of excuses you can hang on the last guy, or he genuinely believes it. And if he genuinely believes it, then I'm pretty excited.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, look, I think the weak point has always been the defense, from afar anyway. I think we all can say, gee, we got a lot of talent on offense, and they're going to put up a lot of points. That's prevailing conventional wisdom, whatever that's worth. Likely true, by the way. But you know, if the defense is maturing, coming along, that's a big deal, especially when you look at the scheme and that Grinch has shown in prior seasons at OU. Yeah, it's going to take some doing. And oh, by the way, you're able to see some of the players that are on USC today that played at OU last season, and you can get an actual look at their playing time.
All right, let's go to question number 2 from YouTube viewer. We got a YouTube viewer question from Christian Totten. Greg, ask the panelists this question next week, please. It's more personal, opinionated. What is the solidifying moment in your past that made you a Trojan supporter? Extremely interested to hear your guys' perspective. So this one, I'll just take a little bit of control. We'll kind of go, Mark, what solidified your moment to be a big Trojan fan?
I'm sure I mentioned it on the episode that Christian didn't catch on YouTube, but it was when Frank Jordan kicked the game-winning field goal against UCLA back in '77. I was sold. I saw everybody in Cardinal celebrating. I saw the horse running. I heard the band playing. And it was just amazing. I was part of the cult forever.
Chris?
Yeah, for me, it was 1984. My family had just moved back to Southern California. My dad took me to the LSU USC game that year, a disastrous game for SC. But I fell in love with it. I loved everything about it. The field, the sounds, the game. Dalton Hilliard ran for like 6,000 yards for LSU. And just the beat.
He's still running.
Yeah. I mean, it was horrible. But I loved it. And then we went back later that season and watched USC beat #1 Washington at the Coliseum, and I was hooked for life. I knew then that I loved USC football, and that God had put me on this earth to play for USC. Turns out that part of the equation was wrong. He actually cheated me of all the genetic material I would need to do that. But yeah, it was that season that did it for me.
Kevin, you have the unique experience of having been before SC, played for SC, after SC. What perspective do you want to take a look at that?
Yeah, actually interesting story. Marlon McKeever, some of the viewers and listeners might know that name, or the McKeever brothers, the twins. One was tragically killed in an automobile accident. But Marlon McKeever worked for my dad for a while, and he was at our house one day. I came home, which I was allowed to do, and from football practice at the high school I was attending at the time. And he came in the house. I said, "Oh, hey, Mr. McKeever, how are you?" I'm fine. He says, "You're pretty small for a linebacker. I don't know if you're going to make it." That's all I needed to say. I just said, "I'm going to SC and I'm going to kick some ass." And not trying to be delicate about it, but I think my outcome was I went to USC and I did kick some ass. I, respectfully, humbly submit, and I've been USC ever since.
Well, I'll say that when I was 12 years old, entering the tunnel 19 with my Uncle Eddie, and remember seeing the field the first time I saw it, how beautiful it looked, how enormous the Coliseum looked to a 12-year-old, seeing USC come out of that tunnel in those beautiful colors, cardinal and gold, the horse, the whole thing. I think Mark mentioned a lot of it. And I was fortunate that unlike Chris, I was part of a national championship season with the B-boys, Beathard, Bedsole, Brown, Bain, etc., and the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin. And I found out how big a fan I was when SC lost. It was like the world was coming to a complete stop. In '63, SC was #1 in the country, and Oklahoma came in with Bud Wilkinson and Joe Don Looney and a couple others, and it was like 1,000,000 degrees in the Coliseum, and it was just like you're trying to survive it. And Oklahoma was playing like they were right in the middle of Oklahoma weather. And I know when Oklahoma beat SC, I think it was 17-13 or something like this, how depressed I was after it was over. It was like, this can't be happening. This is my first ever USC loss. And rather than say, okay, where's the next good college football team? Well, I definitely wasn't going to be rooting for UCLA, even though my dad was a UCLA fan. And I went through the roller coaster of the highs and the lows. And I will say this, even at the age I am today, when they start to lose, or I don't think they're where they should be, it really freaking annoys me. I will tell you that right now, that when you experience SC at its best, McKay, Robinson 1, Pete Carroll, you know what the capabilities are. And it's like watching a toddler inside of a playpen mess everything up, watching these constant coaching changes of Kiffin and then Sarkisian and then Helton. It's just like, somebody stop this. And, hopefully Lincoln Riley will be the person that does stop it. But I know when SC is SC, going to a game is an event. And I don't care about Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and the swamp in Florida. When SC is good, they're as good as anybody. Let's put it this way, the entire event. So that was actually, I actually appreciated that question. I know that we did discuss this, one of our first Inside the Trojans Huddle, but as an update for the fans that care, I thought it was a worthy question. All right, question number 3 from David in Merced, California. On the last episode, you guys mentioned Raleek Brown. Do you think Darren Sproles is a good comparison? What do you think?
Well, I sure hope so. He was. Sproles was, he owned special teams, all-purpose yards. I mean, the guy he was a tough tackle. My gracious. And he had that elusiveness and blazing speed. And boy, if you saw the back of his jersey, that was not a good day if you're playing defense. I hope that Brown has that capability. We'll find out, right? So that's what's so fun about upcoming season. Players like Raleek Brown are unique, and they have certain DNA characteristics. Or on that subject a little bit, that is very hard to duplicate. So we'll see what happens on the field. That's where you make or break. But capability looks like it's there. So it'll be fun to watch how. And in Lincoln Riley, if there's anybody who knows how to get the most out of a offensive player with some skills, Lincoln Riley has demonstrated he is one that is very, very good at that.
Nice thing about Raleek Brown is everything he does is so fluid. I mean, it almost look like he's gliding when he's running. I mean, his feet are touching the ground, but it's you have to see him in action to really understand that he's going to make people miss a lot more than people are going to touch him. So Darren Sproles, I don't know, he was pretty physical. I think Raleek is going to be more like a Jaquiz Rogers, just that type of guy that you're not going to see behind the offensive line. So if he gets that little crease, he's going to find that hole, and he's going to be a pain in the ass for a lot of teams.
Both of those guys are 200 plus. Now, I don't think they were 200 plus when they were going into their freshman year in college.
Right.
They bulked up over the years, but Raleek is significantly smaller right now than both of those guys were when we saw them playing at their primes.
Yeah.
I think Raleek Brown is going. I don't know if he's going to be Darren Sproles. I think he's going to play a much bigger role than some people think, and I don't think he's going to be a receiver. I think he's going to be a running back that lines up in the slot sometimes. But look, having a guy who can make people miss and can go the distance at just about any time is an immensely useful thing to have. And Lincoln Riley knows what to do with those guys.
I think that Sproles was much more physical, the way he was built, like a fire plug. Raleek, I agree with Mark, more of a Jaquiz Rogers. Bruce Rawlinson thinks he's the head coach, legendary coach at Mater Dei, thinks he's the next Reggie Bush. We'll see about that. But
that's pretty amazing praise, though, isn't it? I mean, it's not like Rawlinson hasn't seen a lot of good players. It's not like this is a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about. That's the quote that really caught my attention when I saw that too. I thought to say that he's going to be the next Reggie Bush. That's something.
Well, we're going to find out. Question from Ricky from the Big Apple, New York City. Thinking about our O-line and the Haskins situation, that's Bobby Haskins, the transfer tackle from Virginia. Heard potential about Diedrich versus Monheim for guard to slot Haskins in at tackle. Always good to have depth, but at what point do you need to lock in the 5 to focus on cohesion with the one group? Also, more of a football question, but would we ever try to mix and match the line during a game, either for freshness or someone is having a bad day? Mismatch comments?
I think Haskins is going to play, and he's going to play a lot. I'll be surprised if he doesn't start somewhere, although I think he has been running with the 2s. Look, guys, cohesion's good, but every offensive line, including the good ones, are playing at least 7, usually 8 guys. You constantly have guys coming in and out because if you're playing offensive line, you got guys getting dinged up all the time. So I don't know that they have to settle on anything. They need to figure out who their 8 guys are, I think, and who can play which spots. But I suspect they're well on their way to figuring that out.
Yeah, they got to lock down the center position, which I think they have, but they need to lock that one. You have to lock down so that you have that continuity across the line. And then you can, move guys in and out of inside, guard positions, outside tackle positions. certain role players where if you're going to run a certain amount of pulling, trap plays and misdirection and what have you, you got guys that are a little better at that than others. You can see that's kind of slipping in, slipping out. You got to be a little careful with that. You don't want to tip your hand too much to the opposing defense. But I think lock down the center, and that makes everybody else much more comfortable in their role, so they don't have that hesitation that we're not quite sure. Do I have an inside? Do I have an inside seam? Do I have the outside? Do I have to reach? Mostly on run plays, but on pass rush where you get a lot of different defensive look. It's the center that calms folks down with the calls up front.
All right, I want to get two questions in, then we're going to wrap it up. But I appreciate the people that want to ask questions on the show, so bear with me here. Question 5 from SC the One. What is the story on Corey Foreman missing 2 practices? And has our punter number 42, Aiden Sleep Sultan, shown what he can do yet? Also, why is a punter wearing Ronnie Lott's number along with walk-on wide receiver Danny Ryan? Isn't this a coveted number for the defense? I'll stop now so Arledge doesn't complain about how many questions I'm asking.
That's too many questions. That was.
I was going to say we're going to start off with you, Chris. I think your name was mentioned, so you get
too many questions. Too many questions. But I'll give you this: the reason that punter is wearing Lott's number. Wait till you see this kid hit. Devastating. That's all I want to. I don't want to talk about punters. I don't like talking about punters or kickers.
As far as Corey Foreman, look, he had reason to be absent with excuse, according to Coach Riley. When we did see him again last week, Riley did say that he's been battling a minor injury. When we saw him, he had one of those long neoprene sleeves on his left leg. That's what's going on with Corey Foreman. So can't tell you much more than that. We can
look. We need Corey Foreman to perform this year. Yeah, we need that position desperately, and regrettably, I have my doubts given what I've seen so far. But hey, it's up to him. He wants to step up and perform. Go for it.
Yeah. All right. Question 6 was from 03 Burrito. I think it was just answered about Corey Foreman on the depth chart. So we're gonna end it there. Again, thank you to everybody. If you have a question or a comment for our panel, go to either the We Are SC message boards and click on the thread that pertains to Inside the Trojans Huddle viewer or listener questions. Again, we thank so much of you, all of you, for watching or listening. That's a wrap for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. Big thank you to this week's panel of Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, and Kevin Bruce. And a special big thank you to all of you for watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Until next Tuesday, this is your host, Greg Katz, reminding all of you to fight on, everybody.